I want to draw your attention to comments students made during the break. Doug, tell me what you were saying during the break.
So a lot of times I find when I'm working with managers, owners of businesses, or church boards, I find that a lot of the problems I run into are when you are things that the pastors have just gotten burned out. They've lost focus of what they're trying to achieve. And people sometimes misread them stepping back. Some of the illustrations we were using, that they're a step back of a situation and not really handle it properly. That sometimes is a sign of burnout, not a sign of poor management. And so sometimes you have to evaluate the circumstances going on. What's happening with the board? What's happening with the pastor? How has the church been handling growth? And growth is sometimes your biggest enemy. People think that growth is really great, but growth is not really great sometimes. If you don't have the staff in place to handle growth, it could be your biggest enemy. And then the pastor is not doing their job and you're criticizing that guy. No, the pastor is doing his job. He's just burned out because he's taken on too much responsibility, and we're misreading the problem. And sometimes that's hard to do, but it's not possible to do. So you just have to understand the culture of what's going on in the church and then make your evaluation.
Do you think, though, that burnout is a sign of poor self-management?
Not necessarily. Burnout, I think, can be several different reasons. Just burnout can just be that I've just worked too much, and I've lost my focus on what I'm trying to achieve. And I don't consider I suffer from burnout a lot sometimes, and depression. And I think that sometimes I let the business run me instead of me running the business. And I get too hung up on things, and I again lose that focus, and then I get back on focus, and I'm okay.
Well, that would be title for number 2. That's what you just said.
Yeah, that would be self-management.
Right. So what checks do you guys have in your lives to prevent burnout?
Your wife.
You're doing too much. Stop it. Really, what do you do that keeps you from? You guys have had long ministries. What do you do what would you tell Blaine here to do to stay in it for the long run?
Sometimes I say I have to go back to the drug statement. Just say no. Okay, that ad campaign for drugs. Just say no.
People's expectations.
Right. You say that I'm not the savior of the world. God doesn't need me to meet the Great Commission, and I just need to stop and slow down, get back on track again of what I'm trying to achieve, and not take on the burdens of everything. And it's really simple to do. It's really hard to implement sometimes, because all of a sudden you have all these things you have to start saying no to the people who are dependent on you doing. That's called delegation.
Well, I had an experience where what I learned to do, and when you're small, you tend to develop the habit of being everybody's everything.
Yeah.
But as you grow, then it becomes more than one man. So I had to come to the point where I realized that I'm not the Christ. And I cannot be everybody's everything. So then we have to look circumspectly and realize what is it we can do and can't do. So I do everything from the pulpit. So I just say to the church, we've come to a point where there's some things God can't do. And so now, instead of everybody just dropping in when you want them, having cost them come out, and having cost them back, and I had this open door. Now, we have to do a little different.
Yeah, they got a point.
We have to block off some times now that are just my time. In the middle of the day now, stop, take a nap. Secretary comes in, she'll close the door and turn my light out and won't let anybody disturb. But we have to come to, you said it earlier, we have to take care of ourselves. Otherwise, we won't be able to take care. But I think it's important, as I think the other thing, we have to come to the point where we know what we can do, but be as honest what we can't do. But have people who are specialized in certain areas. There are people in our church who are counselors, professionally, certain matters that and they do it.
Be all install people. Yeah.
So begin to use people's gifts. I think that came up earlier. Find out what other people can do, and then that strengthens the community. I'm still helping them, but I don't necessarily have to sit down myself to do it.
Right.
And I found that way I agree. And also, I have a day Friday mornings when I bowl. And I don't let any commitment. I'm an avid bowler. I like free competition. School called me yesterday, wanted me to teach a class on Friday mornings. I can't do it. Can't teach a class on Friday morning.
You have a hobby, and
yeah,
that's part of your sanity.
It's a fellowship.
You got to protect it.
Yeah. So we have to have something that we do that's for us.
That's right.
And it's not selfish, it's therapeutic.
No, I agree.
You have to have something that you do for yourself. And so I bowl, and then other times I just like to sit in my office and close the door and just sit there. Just a minute.
Yeah.
But it helps me.
That's great. That's great.
Sometimes we get going a lot, and what happens, sometimes my pastors say, hey JT, let's go out and have some ministry of encouragement. Him and I take off in the middle of the day and go golfing and just ride and talk, release some stuff. When we get back to the church, it's like, where you go?
Yeah.
It's not about the little white ball.
No, not at all.
That's great.
I embrace all of that, and I think that's like one of my pet peeves about not doing too much just because of the burnout, the ineffectiveness of ministry. I think my challenge is though when I'm not a pastor, so I still have the humane individual that's still over me, my pastor. By all means, I believe that God has him there as my overseer. But it's the greatest challenge sometimes is when, I'm very few. I got a wife, I got 2 kids, and I'm doing ministry full time. So not too many of these pastors out there, number one, who are, that I know of that are in that position that I fellowship with. And number 2, sometimes I don't think my pastor understands because sometimes I feel a spirit of obligation that I have to go everywhere and be everywhere and do everything. You know what I'm saying? And and I'm like, man, Lord, you don't want to come off. I don't want to come off just saying, well, I'm being rebellious. But in the same token, you know what I'm saying? I gotta, my wife. I'm right. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's.
I introduced a question into the culture of our organization. That whenever something comes up or somebody wants me to do something, I say, I would be glad to do that. What would you like me to stop doing so that I can start doing that? Wow. It is amazing what that question does. Right? Because it says, I am not going to keep piling up.
Right.
That's a question that I know what my employees ever learn.
Watch out now.
Oh, man.
And really, honestly, in your team, at the end of a meeting where you've delegated all the stuff out, say, okay, realistically, how much of that can you get done? Because everybody knows, I probably, until next quarter, I probably really won't hit that hard. I wasn't going to tell you that because we're in a meeting, but now that you asked, People have a certain bandwidth of things that they can do, and
you got to be careful with that. Depends on where you work.
with that.
I've seen people get axe murdered, i.e., fired, because the boss saw that as a no.
Right.
And
Again,
they don't tell them no.
if the leader's taking care of himself, then he's going to care about the health of the people under him. Right? And that's not means he's let them play golf whenever they want. But he's going to be realistic about expectations.
Yeah, maybe the classical compromise on that is like the secretary gets trapped between the person she's working for and 3 others who work for that person too.
Right.
Who ask, and
Yeah.
she just asks them to set their priorities of her work. And she'd be happy to accommodate them all. Well, then, of course, they refer to the boss's work first. They're not going to say, well, put mine ahead of the boss's. They're going to have to check with the boss for them. The 2 of us have something that we had a motorhome for a number of years. We had your concept. What are you going to throw away when you bring in something new? Pretty soon the motorhome can only hold so much.
That was no bad idea.
Yep.
Do you find that maybe part of that is really understanding how we're wired as leaders, not talking about employees, talking about as leaders, because I think that's really a big challenge to do that. But really knowing how we're wired and what our strengths are, what our giftings are, and that we actually make our decisions based more along those lines and having a sense that we have to be all things, all men. I think sometimes as leaders we don't do a really good job really understanding what our strengths are, what we're supposed to be doing, and what others are just outright better at. And usually those things we're not good at take more time to do.
Right.
Then even if someone knows what they're doing because we're not good at it, and that helps us even in the management of our time. So
back to that first point, self-awareness. Okay, so that feeds into then self-management, right? You know what you're good at. You can. One of the things that is really good about being a leader is that you have more power over what you say yes to and what you say no to. When you're a subordinate, you kind of have to carry out orders. If you have to do something you're not that good at, well, you got to carry it out. One of the luxuries of leadership is you can allow yourself to put most of your energies towards the stuff that you're really good at and delegate higher, towards those weaknesses.
At Joel Osteen, I was interviewed with Larry King. Did you see that?
Didn't see it.
He and his wife, Larry King, turned to her and she said, "Is he this way at home?" And she said, "What you see here is what you see at the church and what you see at home." In other words, he was consistent. And as the camera comes on to his Sunday morning time, from the high rafters of the far end of the arena, you can tell there has to be a balance in that man's life, or all this could not be taking place. It's fascinating to think of all the people that must be engaged there in order to have that kind of an attendance in that stadium. I don't know if you've had a chance to see the opening shot, but the balance is, I think Paul writes about balance in our lives. And it sounds like that man has the balance in his life.
And just, the little things like taking vacations. I mean, that's what I mean, a leader. I haven't taken a vacation in 8 years. And what an idiot. Why not?
And leading the group to Israel is not necessarily that vacation.
Right. I don't know how stressful that is. But, okay, on from the discipline of self-development. We've talked about this already, and you guys are enrolled in school, so you don't have a problem with this one. He talks about in the book the unlearning curve, that it's not necessarily the acquisition of new knowledge as much as it is the unlearning of the old stuff. I've been doing it this way, and now I'm learning to implement something new. I'm unlearning. We live in a culture where there's so much of this. I mean, you could go every weekend from one conference to another. There's a lot here. It's just a matter of availing ourselves of it and the appropriate right ones, and not overdoing it. Seminar junkie. Take up hobbies or sports. One of the things I read the first time I read Wild at Heart, he says what makes your heart come alive? He says, don't answer just the churchy stuff. A little prayer makes my heart come alive. Really, does chocolate make your heart come alive? It makes your heart really come alive. And for me, because of my story, playing ice hockey was really big in my life. And I hadn't done it for 18 years. And I thought, one of the things that makes me come alive is just being involved in hockey and playing. But I'm old now, and I haven't played in a long time. And lo and behold, a letter comes to our church that says they're starting the Northwest Hockey Ministry at this rink down here. Wow. I was like, whoa. So I showed up the first time they ever had it. It's been going on for 3 years now. Every Friday night they have 2 time slots. They pray at the beginning, they bash each other's heads in, and they pray at the end. And, we've started to see people, come to Christ through this. And, if I hadn't said, what am I really passionate about, then I wouldn't have been able to bring Christ into the hockey rink. So just that, doing the stuff that makes you come alive, whatever it is, bowling, it's a great thing. I grew up bowling, and my parents were always on bowling leagues, and I grew up bowling. My great aunt, was a world champion actually one year.
Wow.
1950. Anyway.
I'll never be a world champion.
And then just the development of taking on new leadership challenges. God put in front of me developing this program, and now maybe developing a leadership center. And I'm dreaming dreams right now, and it's fun. It's invigorating. Just challenging yourself and being intentional about this, right? About being involved in ways that help you to grow, and right, exposing yourself to new ideas and stay curious. Discipline number 4, discipline of mission, right? Your personal mission statement. We'll do next class. Leaders speak in terms of contribution, significance, and change, right? That quote that Doug read out of the book was very powerful, right? What do? They don't tell you their job. They tell you what they're out to change. That's cool. That's cool. And that's someone who's living with a very strong sense of mission. Sense of mission can be the true north for the leader. You can gauge everything else in your life by that mission. It helps you with your decision making as well. And right, it helps you to know what to say no to. I did have somebody in my church once came up to me and he said, "You're really good at saying no to stuff." And I wasn't sure whether that was a compliment or whatever, but I just said, well, at this point in my life, I kind of know what I'm about, and I say yes to that stuff. And the other stuff, I don't feel overly guilty to turn down an offer to speak at the men's retreat or whatever. That was funny that he said that. You're going to say no to stuff.
On your first point there, whose contribution, whose significance, whose change? Leaders speak in terms of whose contribution? Yours, theirs, ours?
All the above.
All the above.
Well, what is a calling from God? A calling from God is to affect change. Right? And when you have that clarified, then that's what you're about, and that's what you talk about.
Say that again. The calling of God is what?
To affect change.
Is to affect change. And God does never call you to maintain the status quo.
Right.
The calling of God is specifically to make a change, that the kingdom come where it's not, or to do battle where battle needs to be done. Right? A calling from God is a call to action and a call to do change. Right? My calling is not to build a leadership center. My calling is to help shape and form healthy leaders. That's what I want to change.
The way you define it, sometimes it comes out like change for change's sake, and that in
It's
itself
changed
is,
based on the calling of God.
Okay.
It's the calling that God wants to see accomplished, and He wants to do it in and through you.
So that would be in terms of your contribution, you church congregation or you employees, your significance and your change. Is that what you're implying there?
The outcome of that change, right?
Okay. I was just wondering if the word your could be slipped into that blank space there. Leaders speak in terms of your contribution, significance, and change.
Well, I think at times they speak of theirs, and at times they speak of those they're leading.
So then it could be our contribution, significance, and change.
That would probably be best.
That's why I'm just trying to.
The change that the leader is spearheading.
Okay. So then they put it in terms of we're shoulder to shoulder here on this situation. Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Again, on this point of the discipline of mission, passion for a certain kind of ministry, or kind of ministry, it should be type of people. You know, I know there's one guy I email back and forth with. I met my last trip to China, who is just passionate about seeing the gospel get to the Tibetan people, and he's learning Mandarin, and now he's getting ready to move up into a Tibetan area in China, and he just has a passion to see the Tibetan people believe in Christ, and it's an awesome calling. Or another friend of mine heads up the Viva Network, which is a global partnership of ministries for children at risk, no matter what that looks like in any country. And he is absolutely passionate. You know, God seems to give people calling for a kind of ministry or a kind of people, and that passion comes through. And that you can sense in them a sense of mission. That's all they're about, and they're not going to allow themselves to get distracted by other things. Mission based on a talent or a gifting, right? Try to get better at what you're already good at. I knew I had some gifts of teaching a while back, and so I went and got a degree in education to help me become a better teacher. If what a teacher is engaged in doing does not play to his or her talent, then it needs to be realigned for a better fit. You can only really operate in a mode that you're not talented or gifted at for so long. You're going to talk about burnout. You know, a lot of times it's just lack of fit. You know when you've been in a situation or been in a job that this just is not me. That this is not me feeling. A person who has a sense of mission will align their giftings and talents with what they're doing. And then, of course, personalities, right? Yielding insights into preferred environment for leaders. Is this a leader who really needs to have a lot of authority? Is this a leader who does better facilitating people? Is this a leader who is high task? Is this a leader who's high relationship? And then you put yourself in those kind of environments that will allow that mission to be better fulfilled. Certain leaders and leadership styles are needed for certain situations, right? And you become aware of what your preferred one is, and when you see others coming, you turn them down. This discipline of mission, having your mission clarified and staying true to it. The greatest leaders are those who are liberated by purpose. It's quite a liberating thing to receive your calling. Because then you can begin to align everything else to it. It's quite a liberating thing. It gives meaning and significance to the day-to-day things. You tend to do things that you're passionate about with a greater degree of excellence. They care about what they do and how they do it. And they're energized by what they do because they're living out of this mission. They're enthusiastic and they're more resilient. Like I said, people with a strong sense of calling to China stayed there, weathered some incredibly difficult times where people who were more talented and more gifted fell by the wayside, went home. there's a resiliency in having a clearly defined mission. And then just the intentionality that brings and how you use your money and the kind of relationships you need to form, the strategies you employ, and just the direction of your life. Having that clear mission is a very powerful thing for a leader. Too bad you don't know what yours is because you haven't done the second booklet yet. Yeah, you'll have to come back in. You'll have to come back in September. Number 5 is discipline of decision making. How do you, as a leader, go about making decisions? Right? Some are very clear, right, with a good knowledge of Scripture, and some are very clear. But, whether to get this color carpet or that color carpet is not found in Deuteronomy. Right. How do you decide how to go about making that decision? It is a great asset to a leader to know the right questions to ask and who to ask them of in trying to come up with the proper information to make a decision. Right? Get enough of the right kind of information. The leader that I have, I'm working with, the minister I have now, he doesn't really like to make a final decision. This is not Mike, by the way. He does not like to make a final decision until really a decision has to be made. He will leave his options open as long as possible until the decision absolutely has to be made, and then he'll make it. That's tough on his staff. That is really tough on his staff.
General Patton said 80% decision made at the right time is better than 100% solution made too late.
There's some wisdom in that. Just the decision-making process, or you're somebody who goes on pure instinct and gut reaction as to what's the right thing without taking the time to gather the information. To be a wise decision maker is a big part of leadership. And then consider the timing. Churches are ready to hear things at certain times, and at other times they're not ready to hear it.
What constitutes the right questions and the right kind of information?
What do you think?
I don't know. Being the concrete linear thinker I am, I'm interested in knowing what that would be. Some would consider the questions would need to go in the direction of whatever their own goals are, their own mission.
Right. I think some of the right questions are: does this accomplish our mission? Is this the right use of resources? What people will be impacted by this decision?
We meet our vision statement.
Does meet our vision statement?
Yeah.
Right.
So that would be the frame of reference for the right questions and the right kind of info.
I mean, have you ever, well, I'm sure you have, a decision was made by a leader and you just felt blindsided by it? Whoa. And, maybe it was one that directly influenced your department or whatever, and they never even talked to you about it. It's that kind of thing.
The reason I ask that is because in the business world, you look at it a little bit differently, and you frame your right answers to whoever is leading you back and whatever goal they have in mind for their own career. So you're busy supporting the boss in a sense.
Right. Then, of course, involving the right people, right? Key leaders, legitimizers. I was telling you about the retired pastor the church I'm in now. He's a legitimizer. He does not have a position in the church. He's professor emeritus, pastor emeritus, which means the pastor on the shelf. But he's more than that. If something's going to go in that church, he really does need to give his nod. He's a legitimizer. So if that pastor wants to get something done, he better spend the time to get the retired pastor on his side. Right? That's what's meant by a legitimizer. And then the veto holders, right? Who are people who could nix this thing? Right? Who are people who could put the brakes on this real quick? And the thing is, they might not do it because it's a bad idea, but they might do it because you didn't consult them, or they didn't feel honored enough or involved enough in the decision-making process.
Would you read the book, Too Brave Temptation?
Too great a
By
temptation.
Joe Gregory.
Yeah, sounds good though.
Every pastor needs to read that.
Too great a
He
temptation.
succeeded the largest Baptist denomination church in Dallas, Criswell. Not Criswell, because the doctor was so bad. And not a problem.
What's his name?
Joel Gregory, Dr. Joel Gregory. The book is called Too Great a Temptation. I recommend it every preacher reads that book, pastor reads that book. Have your dictionary in hand because he's a scholar. But one of the problems, as you mentioned, Vito Holmes, I thought about the wife of that Criswell, who was a little difficult to deal with. When she had searched, she was a Sunday school teacher. Her class raised and gave to the church $1 million a year.
Wow.
How do you move a person?
That's a stakeholder right there. Yep, that's a
How do you move a person who gives you $1 million a year?
Yeah,
And that was,
yeah.
so I just thought about that.
Yeah, it's a good legitimizer, right? And then involving the implementers, right? Who are the people actually going to do it? You know, let's get their input and let's get their involvement. And part of the discipline of decision making is operating from the right motives, right? Am I doing this for my own self-aggrandizement, or is this really, a calling from God? Understanding intended outcomes. There's always going to be unintended outcomes, but at least have a clear vision of what you hope is going to happen. And then debrief decisions. Yeah, I think this is one of the things that we really don't do very much in the church, is to debrief our decisions or debrief events. Again, because it's a volunteer organization and you want to, everybody to feel good, and they just had a ladies' tea. Well, let's sit down. What was your goal? And was the tea good? Was the speaker good? Did you bring in the people that you wanted to? Did you market it well? We don't ever ask any of that. How'd it go? Oh, it's nice. Okay, let me know when you want to have another one. And I was involved, I'm not right now, but last year I was involved in the leadership of the Boy Scouts. After every single event, we sit down. How did it go? How can it be done better next time? And nobody's threatened by it, because it's the culture. It's the culture. It's sort of a rule there. For some reason, we don't do that in the church very much. We're afraid to offend people, but we just don't evaluate stuff. And how do you improve? Interesting thing from the Boy Scouts was they kept a record of it. So we did a certain banquet every year, and we had the suggestions going back. Somebody said, "Well, let's do this." They said, "Oh, you know what? They tried that 3 years ago, and their debrief was, don't do that again."
Wow.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
So the lesson learned 3 years ago kept us from making a mistake this time. I don't know why in churches we just don't have that culture of evaluation and debrief. Anyway, it'll help us make better decisions.
I like the part where it says even when it's painful, because sometimes when you get down to that, it ends up being painful. I had a debriefing not too long ago of an event, and it was so heavy because there was a lot of things that came out that I didn't know as a leader that people released that was just awful. Wow. And man, I felt like, but it needed to come out. And so since, and I have a couple other events where I had the evaluation forms from a few years ago that that was real good. Right. But this particular one that we didn't do a debrief in the first year, but here's the second year, and man, it was like all kinds of drama came out up front. But it was good. It hurt, but it was good to get.
Yeah. And how else do you become a better decision maker? Yeah, just that. And the debrief has to be done well by the leader. So as you're evaluating what happened, you're not evaluating people.
Right.
Well, that tea was terrible. Who got that tea? It was you. You know, you can't have that kind of environment. There, you know, next time let's try jasmine tea instead of dark tea. But, you know, you gotta keep it on the event, and you know when you do that enough, then people will even take it on themselves. Oh, that tea was terrible. I know. I never should have gotten that. I won't get it next time. You know, and they don't feel personally threatened or their job's on the line or anything like that. Okay, well, enough about that. The last one. Oh no, there's two more. The second to last one. The discipline of belonging. First of all, to the family, and here's an easy thing to say, but a hard thing to do. As much as possible for a leader to be at peace with their own family. Mm-hmm. If there's strained relationships, that'll take a toll on you after a while. To go back to when possible, do healing, do reconciliation with first your family. How are those relationships? Because it can be very straining on a leader to have broken relationships, particularly in the family of origin. And then, if married, making that intimacy with your spouse a priority. Don't stop dating your wife. Make those times and keep sending those cards and keep sending flowers and keep a strained marriage, that's going to start showing up and spilling over. And bless your children. Go after their hearts. Do what they're interested in doing. It's kind of funny right now. My son plays for a baseball team, and the coach is a really good coach. He loves baseball, but the coach's son could care less. He's really doing it. He says, "Dad, if you weren't coaching, I wouldn't be playing." And I think, what does this kid really like? He might be better in Boy Scouts. He might be better, fishing or hunting. He might be better doing taekwondo or whatever. You've got to get to the point where it's not about you. It's that coach. He can coach at the high school, or say he doesn't have to coach his boy. He can have an outlet for his coaching. But right now, my daughter is into photography, so I've gotten in there with her, and we're putting a portfolio together. Our local public library has a display case, and we went there this weekend. We drove up there and said, "How can I get my daughter's photos in your display case?" "Oh, well, we rotate them every month, and we can put her in next January." "Well, great." So am I into photography? Not particularly, but this is where the heart of my daughter is. And so I'm going to get in there, and I'm going to make that my thing. That's how you bless your children. You find out what they're good at, what they like, whether you're interested in it at all, and you go for it. You go into it. Discipline of belonging. I mentioned this before about Howard Hendricks. Says I've interacted with enough leaders that now when I meet one, I assume they're lonely and isolated. What are some of the friendship impediments? Too little time. Friendships, they take time. They take time to cultivate. Too little energy, right? Misperceptions of what the purpose of the friendship is. Fear of risk. We talked yesterday about vulnerability. Fear of making a friendship and then having that broken. There's a lot of reasons not to, but there's better reasons too. You're in a good friendship when there's a lot of integrity involved, when people can be authentic. There is that vulnerability and humility. Is this a person you can count on, right? You got a flat tire at 2 a.m., can you call this person? Will they show up? That kind of person. Willingness to listen, sensitivity and responsiveness. Realistic expectations, right? You're not going to expect this friend to share or solve all your problems, but at least it's somebody you can bounce them off. And then just shared experiences. Simply having coffee with somebody once a week or seeing them at business meetings, that's not really where relationships are are deepened. Get this person, go to a retreat or something, or go camping, or go, do something out of the ordinary so that you're building quality shared experiences. And this is the same thing with your spouse or your children as well. I like to do special things with each of my kids. I took one, we got back from a cruise. I actually I was a chaplain on a cruise, so I got a free cruise. Yeah, it was great. Yeah,
did you do any work?
At the end of I had to do, I only had to do 2 devotional times, and then the last night they were going to have me do a reaffirmation of vows for anybody who was having a wedding anniversary. But then they canceled that. So I mean, really, it was two times of 2 morning devotions, and really that was it. I guess I was kind of on call. If anybody had a heart attack, I might have come and sort of acted as the chaplain to comfort the family.
All in America,
but nothing happened. This one was this was Norwegian. Yeah.
You can every pastor can put their name on it.
Yeah,
Although if you live in the middle of the United States, it might be hard for you to get there.
But anyway, that wasn't the point. The point was I took my daughter on that. And none of my other kids have ever been on a cruise. She and I, have these pictures. I did this with you, and the other two didn't get to go. It was a shared experience, and it was just a special time where she just felt like a queen. We had a great time. So there's shared experiences, and making time to have them. Create cultures of belonging, and celebrate people the way that they like to be celebrated. Give them paperweights and things like that. Invest in your coworkers. This is one of the things that I help to put into the organization that I'm working with now. Every year, we sit down with every person in the organization and say, in order to accomplish your mission, we want you to grow spiritually. We want you to grow in your area of responsibility, and we want you to grow in your knowledge. Since this is the China ministry, your knowledge of China. So I'm going to work with you to come up with, and we have funding for you to grow in each of those areas. So we'll give them financing to go to a spiritual retreat. If they need to take a class down at the community college to do Excel better, to do their work better, we'll pay for that. And, when possible, we'll help to finance a short-term trip to China, or, if they say, here are 2 books we think you've got to read if you're going to know anything about China, we'll buy them the 2 books. But to have an organization come and say, how can we make you better all around?
Wow.
That's cool. That's cool. You think, wow, this organization wants to make me better. So really investing in your coworker, that creates a great sense of belonging as well. When people feel like they're cared about. Find more experienced mentors. Right? Find people who can do those stuff that you want to do better. And then be a mentor. A lot of you are at the point where you really need to start investing more intentionally in the lives of younger men. And then act as a peer mentor, which is a lot of what goes on in these module weeks. As people talk about what's going on in your church, I want to tell you what's going on in mine. Just to be able to really use those times to build and encourage. And then belong to your followers. That they know that you're fully invested in the life that you have together. Then the last one, and this is probably the one that we do the least as leaders, is the discipline of aloneness. I loved Pastor Rosa. Sometimes I just go to my office and close the door and just be alone. Get back to that quiet center between you and God. There's a lot of examples of this, of people having wilderness experiences, alone time. Observing a Sabbath can be a time of aloneness, a time of extended prayer time. I have a hard time doing this sort of on my knees, so I go on prayer walks, or prayer hikes. There's a lot of good places right around here to do that. times of fasting. I'm trying to get better at journaling. Can I put journal/blog? Probably not. Because blog, I'm kind of putting stuff out there for other people. Where journal is I'm trying to get better at this. I journal back in January, and I still find myself a lot of times, it's only on Sundays that I'm opening an iPad. I really should do this more often. Because it's interesting, you start looking back. But just that time to reflect, to capture the things, I think that's what journaling does. It really helps you to capture things that God is teaching you. All of these things. So why don't we? Why don't we spend time alone? Well, we're busy people. We're all busy people. And it feels when you start doing this, I've gotten a lot better lately at taking care of my own heart. And it feels when you first start doing this, it feels really selfish. It really does. Because you're not doing anything. You're not getting anything done. But I find that the time I do then spend getting stuff done is much more effective because I've spent that alone time and I'm more centered on who God is. Now, sometimes we don't do this alone because we have a wrong view of God, that He, as a taskmaster, expects a lot from us, and if we let up, we're in big trouble, right? And where did that come from? Talking about going back to some family of origin stuff. Where did that come from? Right?
Also, it can come from scouting.
It can come from scouting.
Tasking.
Yeah, definitely. Unresolved issues in our own lives that we don't want to face. If I sit there, if I have time alone, those demons might come up. There's things from my past that I've not resolved, and better just to stay busy, right? So I don't have to think about it. So a lot of times, unresolved issues can keep us from pulling aside and spending that alone time with God. So his conclusions are to choose greatness. Great spiritual leaders bless people. Great leaders are marked by gratitude and consider leadership a privilege. Great leaders serve as portals through which the kingdom of God pours in from the future to invade the present. That's an interesting way to put it. Great leaders make countless decisions to arrive at their destination. There's a lot of things along the way, all those integrity checks, obedience, there's a lot of things along the way. And great leaders wage war with the forces that keep them and others from enjoying the life that God intends. Wow, I like that. Okay, we're going to take a real quick break. In fact, I don't want you to leave the room. If you want to stand up for a second. Joel and I are going to do a little role play here. And that has to do with the third part of the case study. So I want to go out with him.